Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Um, so, in the last video, we began discussing how the concepts of the Torah are, universal concepts, and how even though the some of the mitzvahs are specific to Jews, the concept behind the mitzvahs um, are still um, spiritually revealing in nature, and learning about them helps us understand the spiritual reality, that we live in, which is important. Um, it's also important to understand that the um, forefathers that the Torah teaches us about were great, spiritual giants that um, encountered a lot of different things in their lives, um, whether they had personal troubles, or they went to war, or if, enemies were after them, or if they accomplished great things. They did everything with a sense of understanding that it was divinely ordained for them, that um, their life, their individual life was specifically curated for them, and that the living with that kind of faith allowed them not to just understand it and cope with it, but also to process the feeling of what that is, and to come out with from there with a greater sense of reverence, um, and alignment, a greater sense of spiritual, strength and insight. Because it's only when we get broken down that we are able to, um, become better, become more capable, have a higher capacity for um, administering the divine will. It's when we have trouble, and it's really whatever it might be, um, because we cleave to God, and understand that I'm only here because of you. I look around at this physical world, and it's like, it's important we're here, but never losing track of the fact that um, there's just so many dimensions and aspects to what happens, again, in our personal lives and also in the collective. And it's important to remember that it's all for the best. A lot of the stuff that happens to us is a sense, comes from the need for a repair or tikkun. That may be something we did in this life, or something that we did in the past life. um, it's easy to look at people, or look at any actors, and say, well, these people are evil. But everyone has their own role, um, and yeah, the point, I think the point is that you don't get upset, or you don't get hurt, or depressed, or whatever, because a person did something to you, um, or whatever. You know, you got hurt in some kind of way, whether it was a bad business deal. And this isn't so specific. This is just, I think this is a general principle that you can't get upset at the person. You have to be aware. Obviously, you want to, kind of just, if there's a dangerous person, you want to distance yourself from them. If but It's not about the person, because remember, we're vehicles for the divine will, and we're all kind of like, um, on planets, kind of just, like floating through, and then, one reason or the other, we there's a collision where two separate worlds collide, and there's a impact from that, and whatever comes from that, it's important to understand that, um, again, it's not the person, it's, it's what that relationship might have been, or what that person was doing, or, what their intention was when they committed, um again, this is not specific, but like a murder or whatever, like, we don't understand, we can't get to the bottom of everything and understand, why people do the things they do. um but that's not our job. Our job is to understand it, understand what happened in terms of the relationships, in terms of like what was happening, and understand that, things happen, um and you grow from it. You grow from it, and you say, thank God. Thank God that, this kind of experience was brought into my realm, to teach me, to mold me, to, um you know do something inside that, prompts a recovery. So, Um, and so we can look at the Torah and see, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and all the great leaders and all the great personalities, throughout the Torah, and how they conducted themselves with reverence and devotion, and, even if something bad happened to them or their families or whatever, or enemies are out to get them, they they still did the best that they could, um, and um, ultimately excelled. I mean, these people went on to be, the fathers of nations, you know, leaders of nations, and leaders of the world, and they were, cemented in, the Torah, the very, like, connection between man and the divine. Um, so whatever, whatever trouble a person goes through, we have to understand that, um, it is what it is. So the Torah is meant to be learned universally. The lessons derived by the biblical personalities, good or evil, teach all what is a good practice and what are evil practices, even character traits, evil priorities, etc. The story of creation is for everyone to learn and understand. Um, as everyone, yeah, because these are like these are like fundamental understandings of the world, and they're kind of cryptic, but it's a starting point for us. Imagine being born in the world and not having any clues or any ideas or any instructions or guidelines to make sense of the world, and you know relate to the world in a more um, revealed, intimate way. With the Torah, we have God teaching us how the world was made, the order of things, and everything's very specific. Um, so the story of creation is for everyone to learn and understand. As everyone's Kli develops, a greater depth will be accessible to learn, integrate, and utilize for deeper connection. The Exodus, the plight of the Jewish people, is a warning, a blueprint of how um, Look, this the plight of the Jewish people is a warning blueprint of how wicked nations can and will um, continue to denigrate the purpose of man here in this world. The purpose of man here is to ultimately lift up the world, not just in a spiritual way, but also in a technological way and financial and agricultural, everything. I think what we need to be focusing on is, um, kind of repairing the world, bringing it back to what it could have been, um, and ultimately making this world, this reality here as human beings, something that is ultimately safe, so that when new souls come into the world, they're they can be here and maximize their positive impact. And as time goes on, as technologies advance, and as the world just becomes safer, um, we will be able to do much more, whether it's with spaceships or different kinds of vehicles that allow us to you know, hover or whatever it will be. We're definitely going to get there. um, and the future, probably in 20 years, is going to the world's going to look much different in 20 years. um, and it's something that we're building now. um, and it's a great time to be alive. And thank you, everyone.